Hey guys, so what we're going to do is we're going to take individual components of a three-wheeler. Instead of having a video where I just cram everything together and you go from a junk bike to a running bike, we're going to slow down a little bit, and that way when you're going to search for a problem, you don't have to fast forward or skip through, you know, a long drawn out video to see that I forgot to film the one part you're looking for. So this video is going to be titled, you know, three-wheeler starter, 200E, 200ES, 200M. They all share the same starter. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the starter out of the 84 that just came in. It's completely froze up. We're going to take it apart. I'm going to clean it. I'm going to kind of assess it. We're going to lube, we're going to lube it up a little bit, and we're going to put it back together. And if everything goes right, then by the end of this video, the starter will be fixed. I hope this format helps you a little bit better. Certainly will be a lot faster to get the information you're looking for. Most of this stuff y'all can do. It's not that hard. I just talk too much. That's the only reason it takes so long. Today, all you're really gonna need is a small hammer, a Phillips screwdriver, a flathead screwdriver, a pocket knife, because I could not find my snap ring tool. So if you have a snap ring tool, please use that. A very small jeweler's flathead screwdriver would work too. I'm pretty good with a pocket knife, so that's what I used. If you use a pocket knife, please be careful. I hate for you to get cut. But anyways, that's all the basic tools you need today on how to kind of recondition your electric starter. Thanks again. Like, share, and subscribe. I do appreciate it. We're growing every day. It's really amazing to watch the numbers. So thank you for your part in that, and I couldn't do it without you. Again, if you need any parts, you can check in the description. I am an Amazon affiliate, and so follow that link. You get the same price or better at Amazon. It doesn't cost you anything, and it actually helps out the channel pretty well. So thank you for that, and I appreciate those of you that have followed the links. I do appreciate it, and it does help out. Hey guys, so the other day we brought that 84 in, and we trying to save it, and the starter was locked up on it. Now it shares a lot of the same parts as the other bikes. The 84 Big Red is what I'm talking about, 200ES hardtail. So more than likely there's either a burnt spot on the brushes, or maybe there's some rust in there that's just causing it to not be able to turn freely. And so this is it here. This is the starter off that bike. Now it shares the same starter as your 200M, your 200E, and your 200ES. All share the same starter, same gear on the front. Now the starters for your 250 class is different, so don't get that confused. Be sure it looks like this, and it has that type of gear on the end of it. The 250 class is a smaller, different gear. So that's a good way to know if you're looking at a used one online. You can get aftermarket starters. I've never done that. I've never had to. What happens most of these times that the starters, they just sit out and the weather gets them, or maybe the bike gets sunk and then it gets parked because it quit running, and in the weather, the hot and the cold, and they start to rust on the inside, and they just don't, they just can't take it. So that being said, what we're going to try to do here today, and I've had good success with this, and that's why I wanted to share it with you today, is we're going to take the starter apart and we're going to clean it and we're going to put it back together. And I have a feeling that once we get it back together, it'll be fine. If you have some dielectric grease, use that. If you don't, just be sparingly with your axle grease, which is what we're going to use today. So I'm going to shut up and get started. So here we got our starter on the table. Went ahead and pulled it out of the bike. Remember, it indexes, it ties in. There's these two bolts here that are on the right side of the frame. There's a bracket that holds it on. Not a lot, really. This nose does have a rubber O-ring on it, and that's to keep water from getting into the engine. You see here, I'm going to put these pliers on it just to show you that it's locked up. I would not recommend putting pliers on your sprocket, but that's where we're at today. I'm turning it. It's not turning. So it's pretty hung up. So what we're going to try to do is we're going to pull it apart and we can see if we can fix it. The first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to index the starter. So what I want to do is I want to make sure that when I put this back together, that this post right here is in the exact same location in relationship to these two bolts on the back. If you get that 180 out, then now all of a sudden your starter wire's on the bottom and it's going to touch the frame, and you're going to have a fire, or you're going to have a lot of sparking. So you don't want to do that. The best way to avoid that is just to take some office supplies home with you one day and just draw you a line across your starter. And all we're doing is just making a reference part. If you've got a really nice starter and you don't want to draw on it, you can certainly put a piece of tape on it and then take the tape off. That's an option too. The black line doesn't bother me. So we're going to take these two outer screws off, and then that's going to allow us to pull the nose off of this, and this barrel is going to come off. We're going to have an armature inside, and you'll see what it's all about. I've never had a problem with them, but we'll see. All right, this is one of them do as I say, not as I do situations. They make a snap ring plier. I have one. I can't find it. So until I can clean up the shop and find it, we're going to improvise and use what I have. Today is our trusty old pocket knife. So if you do this, please be careful. I don't want you to cut your finger. So what we've got is a little snap ring here, and it just indexes. If you're going to do this, be sure and kind of keep a finger on top of the snap ring like so. That way when it goes shooting across the shop, you have an idea what direction to go look for it. Now when I take things apart, especially if it's small parts, things that maybe I'm not real familiar with, I don't take these apart every day, I kind of lay them out on my table in order as I take them off. So starting from left to right, as you see, I've taken my screws, I've laid them here, got my snap ring here, and I'll just lay the parts out across my table as I'm working on it. Reason being is when it goes time to put it back together, I can start on the right side of the table, work my way back across. You can take pictures, you can take notes, jot down on a piece of paper, whatever works for you. So we got our gear, we're gonna pull it off. Now we can take the nose of this starter off, and it just slides right out. Careful when you see things fall out, you put it back where you got it from. That way you don't make a mistake when you put it back together. Now these two halves, I've had these where they're really, stuck together. Just be sure that when they go back together, you've got them indexed. Now that being said, we are going to basically dislodge two brushes. We're going to dislodge two brushes when we pull this apart, so we want to be careful about that. Mosquitoes. This is a bushing here. You want to be careful about that. It actually looks really clean in here. I'm quite surprised. Now you see I did not pull the armature out of this case, and here's why. I'm going to try to hold this for you. We've got two brushes. This is a brush, like a magnet really. So what it does is the electricity, runs around here, and you see how dirty the armature is. When I pull the armature out, these brushes, they're on springs, and they're actually going to be pushed inward. But taking it out is the only way to clean it. You can disconnect the springs. They're located right here. You can take them off the armature. I just took the tension off the spring and rolled the spring back into the housing. That way it won't come off, it won't come loose. We got parts and pieces falling out here. And so if you had to replace a brush, and you've probably heard of somebody replaces the brushes, that's what they're replacing, is that piece right there. That's your brush. So what it is our armature is actually locked up inside the actual housing itself. So it's gotten enough rust to build up inside here where it sits inside the magnets. So we're gonna have to knock it out. All kind of parts falling off of here. There we go. We got some movement finally. All right. So there's our problem. It's always nice when you can actually find the problem. I hate taking stuff apart and not figuring out what's wrong with it. So this is our armature here, basic electric motors, nothing really fancy here, but you see all that rust. And that's what was keeping that motor from spinning. So the best thing I like to do with them is carefully, you can run them on a wire wheel. Take a wire wheel and a drill, that works really well. If you have a bench grinder, you can use that. Try not to remove any material other than the rust. Try not to take the coating off of it, because it's there for a reason. So we're gonna clean this up. I'm probably gonna spray this out in here with some cleaner. Everything looks to be in good rapport, it's just rusty. And so what we're gonna wanna do is we're gonna wanna clean up the rust inside that sits on those magnets. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna spray it out with some brake clean. Let it dry real good before we put it back together. All right. Better. All right, let's clean this armature up. All right, so now our armature's cleaned up. You see, I didn't spend a lot of time with it. You just want to clean it up. You don't want to take it down so far as you're taking material away. This copper coating on here, you want to be sure and keep that. You just want to get the rust off of it. So to make good contact on those brushes, get as much power to it as you can. Be mindful that if you break one of these windings, one of these wires that you see running through here, it will no longer work, or it will not work as good, at least, let's say that. Still got a little rough spot. I'm gonna go back and hit it again now that I look at it really close in the good light. I'm gonna try to get it where it's as smooth as possible. Remember, this has got to spin inside those magnets. You don't want any burrs or any real imperfections. So now our armature's all cleaned up. I am gonna spray it with a little lubricant just to keep it from flash rusting. It's just, you know, preventative maintenance at this point. Our brushes look good. They're probably half worn down. Remember, these starters don't get used a lot. As long as your bike is in good operating condition, that starter's only going to run a few seconds to get before the motor fires. So we're ready at this point, really, to kind of start putting things back together, kind of inspect as we go. Anywhere we need to just kind of look, you know, our seals are basically, they're all intact. This is a bushing here in this nose piece. We're going to put some grease on that. Same with this end back here. We're going to put some grease in here. So we're going to put grease on both ends of those before we put it back together. Try to put things back in assemblies if you can, or in sections. Whatever works for you, how you remember how you put it back together. So the reason I pulled these brushes out like I did is so I won't have to fight with them when I stick this armature back in here. As you see, it just goes right back in. Kind of checking it to make sure that it does, you know, spin. And it does. So I'm just going to put a little spray lubricant on the armature itself, and just kind of blot it dry. I just don't want that metal to flash rust. I want to get it in the starter and get it working. All right, now while it's in place here, we can go ahead and reset our springs. And I'm just pulling these back. They're not under that much tension. You can hold them with your fingers, just be careful. Like that. So you just put your spring back in place. This is your spring, and as you see, it's on the back side, and it's holding the magnet against the armature, or holding the brush against the armature. All right. Now you do want to make sure that they seat, that they are touching, that the wires, you didn't bend them out of place or anything. This has all got to fit back together in a pretty small package. All right, there we go. So now we've got these bushings and spacers and washers we need to put back in here. Yeah, there you go. Make sure your ring is pushed down in here properly. Mine just shifted out of spot. There's actually a little detent right here. You want to line that up. I'm going to go all the way around, and it will sit down into this housing. It will jump out because the springs are pushing against the armature. All right. So that's where we need to be. And that's why I mark a line right there. This is the mark where we took it apart all the way across. I'm going to go ahead and set these screws in place, keep everything together while we work on that snap ring, since I don't have my snap ring pliers. When you tighten these down, just try to tighten them down evenly, left and right. And they're pretty snug too. Again, be sure and start with a good screwdriver that fits very well, really well. All right, so now we got our gear. It only goes on one way. So, and then our snap ring. And when you're doing these snap rings, like I said, I apologize for not having the right tool. Keep a finger over the top of it just so it doesn't go flying across the shop. Even if you do have the right tool, you don't want to lose that. There you go. Just walk it all the way around. Make sure it's seated all the way across. You don't want that coming across and ended up in the bottom of your motor. All right, I'm gonna go grab the, there we go. You can turn it now. Sounds good. I'm gonna go grab the battery charger. We'll throw some juice to it and see what happens. Now be careful when you test these. They can jump on you, just like a car starter. A car starter's got a lot of torque. So make sure you don't have anything really, around it can get caught on. I've got the chassis grounded here with the black or the negative, just like it would be on the bike. When I touch the positive to this bolt right here, it should start. It probably sparked a little bit, so be prepared for that as well. There we go. Starter's fixed. It's not a rebuild. It's not new. I would never claim that it be new, but it wouldn't turn at all before, and it certainly wouldn't start a bike, and it will now. So I'm going to take that as a win. That will keep you from having to mail order an aftermarket starter. Keep the original starter as long as you can. You can replace those brushes. If the windings are intact, as in not broken, not rusted through, there's really not a lot that can go wrong with one of these little starters. There's bushings at both ends. You can replace those. Those are really only the wear items. The rest of it is non-interference. We're going to take down each component, break it down, kind of explain what the parts do, how the pieces interact together, how they work. That way you have a better understanding of how you can fix them when they don't work properly. So y'all take care. Thanks for watching.